Welcome to the Temple of the Living Fire, in episode 3 of our journey into Hermeticism. This episode is a look at the work by the theosophist Mabel Collins called Light on the Path. We will explore this work over the course of 7 episodes.
Dear unknown friend, today we will introduce a commentary by Yogi Ramacharaka called Some Light on the Path, which is examining the precepts outlined by Mabel Collins in her manual Light on the Path. We thought it well to present this work, as everyone on the path will find they encounter certain challenges that are universally experienced. The commentary will provide reassurance and aid in cultivating a healthy mental attitude in the aspiring Hermeticist. Some Light on the Path. We will take for the subject of our first lesson the way of attainment, the path, and we know of no better method of directing the student's steps along the path than to point out to him the unequaled precepts of the little manual Light on the Path, written down by M.C. Mabel Collins, an Englishwoman, at the request of some advanced mind, in or out of the flesh, who inspired it. We will quote from the little manual, precept after precept, following each with a brief explanation. In this connection, it may be as well to state that Light on the Path is practically an inspired writing, and is so carefully worded that it is capable of a variety of interpretations. It carries a message adapted to the varying requirements of the several planes and stages of life. The student is able to extract meanings suited to his stage of development. In this respect, the work is different from ordinary writing. One must take something to the book before he is able to obtain something from it. In The Illumined Way, the work is interpreted in part upon the lines of the psychic or astral plane. Our interpretation will be designed to apply to the life of the student entering upon the path, the beginner. It will endeavor to explain the first several precepts in the light of Karma Yoga, and will then try to point out the plain meaning of the precepts pertaining to the higher desires, then passing on to an explanation of the 4 Some Light on the Path precepts, relating to the unfoldment of spiritual consciousness, which is indeed the keynote of the little manual. We will endeavor to make a little plainer to the student the hidden meanings of the little book, to put into plain, homely English the thoughts so beautifully expressed in the poetical imagery of the Orient. Our work will not contradict the interpretation given in The Illumined Way. It will merely go along side by side with it, on another plane of life. To some, it may seem a presumptuous undertaking to attempt to interpret that gem of occult teaching, Light on the Path, but the undertaking has the approval of some for whose opinions we have respect, and has, what means still more to us, the approval of our higher self. Crude though our work may be, it must be intended to reach some, else it would not have been suggested. These rules are written for all disciples. Attend to them. These rules are indeed written for all disciples, and it will be well for us all to attend to them. For the rules for the guidance of occultists have always been the same, and will always remain the same, in all time, in all countries, and under whatever name the teaching is imparted. For they are based upon the principles of truth, and have been tried, tested, and passed upon long ages ago, and have come down to us bearing the marks of the careful handling of the multitudes who have passed on before, our elder brothers in the Spirit, those who once trod the path upon which we are now entering, those who have passed on to heights which we shall one day mount. These rules are for all followers of the path. They were written for such, and there are none better. They come to us from those who know. Before the eyes can see, they must be incapable of tears. Before the ear can hear, it must have lost its sensitiveness. Before the voice can speak in the presence of the masters, it must have lost the power to wound. Before the soul can stand in the presence of the masters, its feet must be washed in the blood of the heart. Before the eyes can see with the clear vision of the spirit, they must have grown incapable of the tears of wounded pride, unkind criticism, unmerited abuse, unfriendly remarks, slights, sarcasm, the annoyances of everyday life, the failures and disappointments of everyday existence. We do not mean that one should harden his soul against these things. On the contrary, hardening forms no part of the occult teachings. On the material plane, one is constantly at the mercy of others on the same plane, and the more finely constituted one may be, the more keenly does he feel the pain of life coming from without. And if he attempts to fight back, to pay off these backbitings and pinpricks in like kind, the more does he become enmeshed in the web of material life. His only chance of escape lies in growing so that he may rise above that plane of existence and dwell in the upper regions of the mind and spirit. This does not mean that he should run away from the world. On the contrary, if one attempts to run away from the world before he has learned its lessons, he will be thrust back into it again and again until he settles down to perform the task. But, nevertheless, one of spiritual attainment may so live that although he is in the midst of the fight of everyday life, yea, maybe even a captain in the struggle, he really lives above it all, sees it for just what it is, sees it as but a childish game of childlike men and women, and although he plays the game well, he still knows it to be but a game, and not the real thing at all. This being the case, he begins by smiling through his tears when he is knocked down in the rush of the game. Then he ceases to weep at all, smiles taking the place of the tears. For when things are seen in their true relation, one can scarcely repress a smile at himself and at or with others. When one looks around and sees the petty playthings to which men are devoting their lives, believing that these playthings are real, he cannot but smile. And when one awakens to a realization of the reality of things, his own particular part, which he is compelled to play, must evoke a smile from him. These are not mere dreams and impracticable ideas. If many of you had an idea of how many men, high in the puppet play of worldly affairs, have really awakened to the truth, it would surprise you. Many of these men play their part well, with energy and apparent ambition, for they realize that there is a purpose behind it all, and that they are necessary parts of the machinery of evolution. But deep within the recesses of their souls, they know it all for what it is. One on the path must be brave and must acquire a mastery over the emotional nature. This precept does not merely refer to physical tears, for they often spring to the eyes involuntarily, and though we may be smiling at the time. It refers to the feeling that there is anything for us to really cry over. It is the thought back of the tears, rather than the tears themselves. The lesson to be learned from these rules is that we should rise above the incidents of personality and strive to realize our individuality. That we should desire to realize the I am consciousness, which is above the annoyances of personality. That we should learn that these things cannot hurt the real self, that they will be washed from the sands of time by the waters of eternity. Likewise, our ear must lose its sensitiveness to the unpleasant incidents of personality before it can hear the truth clearly and free from the jarring noises of the outward strife. One must grow to be able to hear these things and yet smile, secure in the knowledge of the soul and its powers and its destiny. One must grow to be able to hear the unkind word, the unjust criticism, the spiteful remark, without letting them affect his real self. He must keep such things on the material plane to which they belong, and never allow his soul to descend to where it may be affected by them. One must learn to be able to hear the truths which are sacred to him, spoken of sneeringly and contemptuously by those who do not understand. They cannot be blamed, for they cannot understand. Let the babes prattle and scold and laugh. It does them good and cannot hurt you or the truth. Let the children play. It is their nature. Some day they will, like you, have experienced the growing pains of spiritual maturity, and will be going through just what you are now. You were once like them. They will be as you in time. Follow the old saying, and let such things go in one ear and out of the other. Do not let them reach your real consciousness. Then will the ear hear the things intended for it. It will afford a clear passage for the entrance of the truth. Yea, before the voice can speak in the presence of the masters, it must have lost its power to wound. The voice that scolds, lies, abuses, complains, and wounds can never reach the higher planes upon which dwell the advanced intelligences of the race. Before it can speak so as to be heard by those high in the order of life and spiritual intelligence, it must long since have forgotten how to wound others by unkind words, petty spite, unworthy speech. The advanced man does not hesitate to speak the truth even when it is not pleasant, if it seems right to do so, but he speaks in the tone of a loving brother who does not criticize from the "I am holier than thou" position, but merely feels the other's pain, sees his mistake, and wishes to lend him a helping hand. Such a one has risen above the desire to talk back, to cut another by unkind and spiteful remarks, to get even by saying, in effect, "You're another." These things must be cast aside like a worn-out cloak. The advanced man needs them not. Before the soul can stand in the presence of the masters, its feet must be washed in the blood of the heart. This is a hard saying to many entering the path. Many are led astray from the real meaning of this precept by their understanding of the word heart. They think it means the love nature. But this is not the meaning. Occultism does not teach killing out true love. It teaches that love is one of the greatest privileges of man, and that as he advances, his love nature grows until finally it includes all life. The heart referred to is the emotional nature and the instincts of the lower and more animal mind. These things seem to be such a part of us before we develop that to get rid of them we seem to be literally tearing out our hearts. We part with first one thing and then another of the old animal nature with pain and suffering, and our spiritual feet become literally washed in the blood of the heart. Appetites, cravings of the lower nature, desires of the animal part of us, old habits, conventionalities, inherited thought, racial delusions, things in the blood and bone of our nature must be thrown off one by one, with much misgivings and doubt at first, and with much pain and heart bleeding, until we reach a position from which we can see what it all means. Not only the desires of the lower self are to be torn out, but we must, of necessity, part with many things which have always seemed dear and sacred to us, but which appear as but childish imaginings in the pure light which is beginning to be poured out from our spiritual mind. But even though we see these things for what they are, still it pains us to part from them, and we cry aloud, and our heart bleeds. Then we often come to a parting of the ways, a place where we are forced to part mental company with those who are dear to us, leaving them to travel their own road, while we take a step upon a new and, to us, an untried path of thought. All this means pain, and then the horror of mental and spiritual loneliness which comes over one soon after he has taken the first few steps on the path, that first initiation which has tried the souls of many who read these words, that frightful feeling of being alone, with no one near who can understand and appreciate your feelings. And then the sense of seeing the great problems of life, while others do not recognize the existence of any unsolved problem, and who accordingly go on their way, dancing, fighting, quarreling, and showing all the signs of spiritual blindness, while you were compelled to stand alone and bear the awful sight. Then indeed does the blood of your heart gush forth, and then the consciousness of the world's pain and your failure to understand its meaning, your feeling of impotence when you tried to find a remedy for it. All this causes your heart to bleed, and all these things come from your spiritual awakening. The man of the material plane has felt none of these things, has seen them not. Then when the feet of the soul have been bathed in the blood of the heart, the eye begins to see the spiritual truths, the ear begins to hear them, the tongue begins to be able to speak them to others, and to converse with those who have advanced along the path. And the soul is able to stand erect and gaze into the face of other advanced souls, for it has begun to understand the mysteries of life, the meaning of it all, has been able to grasp something of the great plan. has been able to feel the consciousness of its own existence, has been able to say, I am, with meaning, has found itself, has conquered pain by rising above it. Take these thoughts with you into the silence and let the truth sink into your mind, that it may take root, grow, blossom, and bear fruit.
Dear unknown friend, we hope you have found this episode helpful. In the next episode, we will explore the precepts as put forth by Mabel Collins in greater detail. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share, as this will help us continue our work. And if anyone is seeking our help through our seasonal ceremonial rites and pujas, please visit our website to be added to the list of names. Thank you, and namaste. The Philosophers of the Living Fire.